Welcome to Free Coding Academy's Unit 6 review video for Computer Science A. Unit 6 is called Arrays. Topic 6.1 is also called Arrays. So an array stores a collection of values from the same data type. The size of an array cannot be changed after being created. So arrays can hold primitive values such as int, double, and boolean, or they can hold reference types such as string or other classes. But the key idea is that an array can only hold data of one type. Next, arrays created with the new keyword will automatically initialize each element. So if an array contains int values, all of them will be initialized to 0. If it's made up of double values, all of them will be initialized to 0.0. If it has booleans, all of them will be initialized to false, and if it contains objects, all of them will be initialized to null. Next, you can use an initializer list to declare and set array values directly. So if you have int, square brackets, nums is equal to, and then curly braces 1, 2, and 3 separated by commas, you're creating an array called nums made up of int values, which stores the ints 1, 2, and 3. And of course, inside these curly braces, you could also have strings or Boolean values or anything else, but you would also have to change the type of data that the array is storing. So you would use square brackets to access or modify array elements. So if you wanted to change the element at index 2, which is going to be this 3 right here, because indexes start from 0 and go all the way up to the length -1. So the length here is 3, -1 is 2. So the index goes 0, 1, 2. So the element at index 2 is 3. So we're changing that to 10. Next, int value is equal to num0. So the variable value is going to store the element at index 0, which happens to be 1. Next, the valid index range, which we mentioned before, goes from 0 to the length of the array -1. And if you want to find the length of the array, you're just going to take the name of the array and then do .length, and that gives you the length. So accessing an invalid index throws an array index out of bounds exception, which we want to avoid. Topic 6.2, traversing arrays. So array traversal can be done through loops, such as for and while loops. So they are used to access each element in an array. So you're looping through each element. Array traversal requires using index values to refer to specific elements. So valid index values range from 0 to the array.length -1, so the length of the array -1. So this is an example using a for loop. So for int I is equal to 0, I is less than array.length, I++, system.out.println array at index I. So here, you're looping through that entire array and you're printing every single element. And this is a very similar example using a while loop. So here, int I is equal to 0, and while I is less than array.length, system.out.println array at index I++. So here, you're initializing the counter variable I to 0, and while that's less than the length of the array, it's going to print each element inside the array and then increment the counter variable. So if you try to access array.length, so basically you're going one index past the maximum index allowed, or lower than 0, so a negative index, that's going to cause an array index out of bounds exception. So when you're using loops to traverse arrays, you want to be very careful that you're not causing an array index out of bounds exception. Next, topic 6.3, enhanced for loop for arrays. So an enhanced for loop, also called a for each loop, is used to traverse an array without using specific index values. So the loop header includes a loop variable that temporarily holds each element from the array during traversal. So during each iteration, the loop variable receives a copy of the current array element. Since it does not refer to the actual element in the array, modifying values using a for each loop does not change the original array. Hence, for each loops should not be used to update array values, because it's not going to work. So this is an example of a for each loop. So for int value, and then the array name, system.out.print value. So here, you're declaring a variable called value, int value, right? So it's an int that's going to store the element in each element inside array, and then that element is going to be printed out. So the same thing in a for loop, and a while loop is going to look like this. And these are the same examples which you saw before, so you can just compare them. So a for each loop obviously is much more efficient if you're just trying to print or access every single value in an array, but it's much less efficient if you're trying to, it's not going to work at all if you're trying to actually update or change those values. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check out the video for Unit 7 next.